Hello everyone, thanks for joining my own studio where I share my passion for watercolors. This week we'll be learning how to do a winter cityscape painting. So this is the painting I did, and this painting was done from Toronto, and you can see I tried to capture the mood of a winter cityscape in this painting. As a beginner or someone new to watercolors, don't get discouraged if you don't achieve the exact result after following this tutorial. It's all about learning to layer and maintain consistency in your painting. Feel free to ask any question in the comment section below or share your painting with me. I'll offer some critiques and paint over for you guys. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. Before beginning to paint, the initial step is to sketch your reference. So this sketch acts as a roadmap, guiding us on how everything aligns when we start painting. In watercolors, it is essential to ensure that the sketch is really light and not dark. You can also do some dark shading wherever there is darker tone, but in our reference there is not that much darker tones in our scene. But if you see at the bottom of the building in the foreground, there is a little bit of darker tones. But you could make it darker, but I'm going to go with my vision and I'm going to sketch the entire thing. So when it comes to sketching, there's a lot of beginners have this issue of blocking the sketch. So before you're blocking the sketch, analyze your reference and look for big major shapes in your reference. So when I see this reference, the big three major shapes coming to my mind is the foreground building as one shape, and the midground building is the church and the background. So think everything as a background as a one single shape instead of thinking each on individual buildings. So once I'm happy with the sketch, I'm going to start with the first wash. The first wash is to kill the whiteness of the paper. But if you see the reference, there's a lot of purplish, bluish colors in it. But I did warm up my wash using a little bit of green in it. So when you paint, don't think about the colors with your reference, but either put the reference close to in terms of warm or cool colors. If you see a cool color, put a cool color. If you see a warm color, add a warm color. And I'm also adding a little bit of yellowish on where the lights are. So I know where the light source are and where the light's sitting. And this is another thing, when you paint, you have to be a little bit creative and you have to express your medium. Because if I would have painted the reference as it is, it would have been quite boring. So I always want to tell a story and I always want to create an impact in my painting. So when you paint, think about that and don't caught up with your reference. And that's the other thing I usually, when I teach, I see with my students is they struggle with putting each and individual thing from their reference. And make sure whenever you paint, try to express, freely. Like what I mean by that, you don't have to be close to your reference and you can paint however you want it. So once I wet my paper and kill the whiteness of the paper, I'm going to use a tissue paper to create a snow effect. So you can see I'm taking a tissue paper and just damping the color I just put over on it. So you can see as soon as I'm taking out the paint from the watercolor paper, it kind of creates this snow effect, and we also know where the snow is coming. So for the background, I just created a simple stroke and thinking everything as a shape. So for the foreground building, so there's one thing you have to be really careful when you're painting watercolor is to layering. So the foreground building, you can see I layered it in such a way that I put the warmish color using yellow ochre, and there's a cool color at the bottom, the cement pillars, I added that as well. And I left it as it is and let it dry. So now I'm focusing on the background building, and you can see for the background building, I'm thinking what shape is it? It's a rectangle shape, and I'm also leaving some white bit. There is snow settling on the building. And I also used tissue paper to create a smoke coming out from the building. And I'm also combining that building, the background building, to the furthest building as well. So now let's block in this church, and you can see even the church, I'm thinking everything as a single shape. The rectangle, and there's a triangle at the top, and that's it. I'm not thinking anything else. And there's also a little bit of gradient happening at the bottom, and I'm also adding that as well. So now if you see, squint your eyes and check my reference and my painting looks a little bit darker. But that's one of the things you have to keep in mind in watercolors, that you have to put a little bit colors, overwork your colors, because the values go really dull. For example, if you're putting a value of 10 and it will go to a value of 7 or 6. So I'm blocking the midtown building on the left hand side, and you can see even in the left hand side there was no light coming from the building. I added that just to create an impact, and that's really important, and creating an interesting painting. And at the end of the day, as an artist, we have to tell a story in an interesting way as possible. So now I'm adding the second wash for the foreground building, and I'm squinting my eyes and checking where are the next second wash or the next details are. So I want to make sure that I want to capture these pillars which is on the foreground, and I'm going to add that. And you can see as soon as we added this second wash, you can see that the whole building is coming alive. So it is really important to know how to do layering, and whenever a lot of people try out my painting, they get really intimidated and they don't know how to control the watercolor painting. And as I said, watercolor takes a little bit of time, because when you, as a beginner, when you paint, beginners tend to overwork their painting. They try to put each and individual stuff, but there's an art of ignoring a lot of stuff when you paint. It just comes with practice. So even when you practice my painting, try to not to get discouraged or intimidated by what I've shown here, but try to analyze the concept what I'm showing and try to apply that principle and the concept while you paint. So now I'm adding that, even though if you see on the top left there's a little bit of darker value, but I'll add the darker value at the top of it. So now I'm adding the cement pillar, and which is facing it, but I'm going to change it a little bit different than what's there. And I added the darker tone, and you can see, and as soon as I add the darker tone, you can see there is value started appearing. So in painting, darker values come to the foreground and lighter values go in distance. So now this is a way I usually paint a snow road. So I take a brush and I try to dab it, and you can see I'm trying to create a texture by using a dry brush mark. And I'm also trying to do really fast as I can. And you can see as soon as I did that, by using that crisp, fresh, fast brush mark, it kind of gives the illusion of a snowy road. And I also added a little bit of warm colors and cool colors and a little bit of colors, and I mixed it. And I wasn't following close to the reference, and I was thinking everything in warm and cool colors. So now I'm going to add the garbage bin, and there's nothing that shows Toronto is the garbage bin. I want to add that. And I also add a lot of cars, and all the painting I do, I usually have a street car, but this is the one painting I didn't have a street car. I just added a car and I left it as it is. So now I'm adding the figures. So when adding figures, try to make sure that you are adding the figures in one simple stroke as possible, and not to try to go and block on the nose, their ears, or anything like that. And I usually do it in a crisp mark, and once I finish it, and I'm also thinking everything as a shape. So I'm also using a darker color to do it. As I said, watercolor tends to go dry. Even though it looks darker now, it goes lighter once it dries out. And there's whenever I add figures, I add everything in 3, and 3 is a magical number, an odd number. Even number are boring, and odd numbers are really nice. And you can see there was a gap between the front figure and the back figure, but I want to create an impact of a triangle shape. So I had a foreground figure, and there's one figure close to the garbage bin, and there's a figure close to the person who is near the garbage bin. And I also had a couple of figures on the in the midground as well. So that kind of enhances perspective as well, because it shows there's perspective happening. So people who are in the foreground, they are bigger, but as it goes in the background, they get smaller and smaller. And now I'm going to add some trees, and you could see, and for the trees, I'm not exactly following my reference. I'm trying to capture the shape and as impressionistic as possible. So the whole point of this painting is capturing the mood of it, and showing our painting as impressionistic as possible. And you can see I'm also using this brush, which has like a really crisp bristles, and I'm trying to make some lines here and there. And when you draw trees, try to make sure have a lot of details in the foreground. As it goes to the background, have lesser and lesser details, and that also enhances perspective too. And that's what exactly I've done in my trees. And I also want to draw some leaves on top of the trees as well. So what I did is I took some paint and I took another brush, and I'm just like splattering some of the paint here and there, and that's it. And I'm not trying to get caught up with details, because whenever you paint, try to make sure to put a lot of details in the foreground than the rest of the painting. Because when you see this painting from far, the first thing viewer going to notice is the foreground than the rest of the painting. So I'm going to speed up the process now so that I can give as much as information I can, and I also want to show how we can finish a painting. So the first thing I did is I used a darker tone to add the street poles and everything, and I also used a lot of white paint to create that for the light source. And I also used white paint on top of the street lights as well. So for in the foreground, I'm going to keep it abstract. So what I did is I took some paint and I splattered on it, and I also added a little bit of darker tones at the bottom of the foreground building from the reference. So now I'm going to glaze over another layer of yellowish tones on my lights, and I'm also adding some little bit of red on top of it as well. So that kind of gives this illumination of light coming from it. As I said earlier, the foreground building is the most important part, or the foreground objects or whatever you have, it's the most important part. So I want to make sure that to capture as much as detail from my reference, and I'm also trying and think everything in a shape. I'm squinting my eyes, and whatever I see I'm putting in my foreground building. For example, if you see the midground building and I squinted my eyes, this is really dull, and I want to make sure that I can capture it as fast as I can. And I'm also going to put a little bit of white paint in the middle of the lamp, so it kind of looks like, you know, the light is glowing from the lamp itself. And it kind of create this visual element for our painting as well. And this is the other way of making your painting look interesting as well. So now I'm going to use white paint, and whenever there's snow, and there's a lot of snow deposits on the tree, and you can clearly see that if you check my reference and if you check my painting, I left out thousands of things. And that's what all about impressions are. You are putting your painting and expressing yourself. And now I added some street wires, and I'm going to add some street poles as well. So the street wires and the street poles, I usually add it at the end just to have a little bit of perspective, and it also gives this directional lines. It takes us into the painting. And you can also see there's also a red sign, and you can't see the reference that much, but I added it just for a visual element. So I always tape my paper just to get this crisp look, and I think it rather came out nice, and I did put our own vision in our painting. Now it's your turn. Take my reference, or take one of your reference, and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this winter cityscape painting tutorial with me. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section below. If you have any other questions related to watercolors, or you want me to cover any other subjects in watercolors, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or comment down below. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. Please feel free to share this video with your friends, family, and fellow artists, and good luck with your painting, folks.